But we should get going because we have a lot to cover in the next 57 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I say we go for it. You up for it?
I'm ready.
Big week.
My body is ready. That's a video game reference that you don't get.
Oh, sorry. 20 seconds to comply. I don't know. I think we're ready to get started on video games. And is it partly timing because of is it E3? Is that what it's called?
Yes. That's why it's in my mind. That's why I'm thinking about it. That's why before we connected on Skype, I was watching trailers. It's that time of year when, I'm thinking about it all the time. But anyway, yes, it's big week, as they say.
Is E3 though? I'm sorry. I'm officially letting down my guard. I'm not being a douche about video games. I actually we talked about this on Back to Work today. I'm actually very open to learning about these things. This is a big deal though, because this is the CES, the Macworld, the whatever of this industry. This is when the big announcements get made, right?
Well, there's E3, there's the Tokyo Game Show, there's a bunch of shows around, and they fluctuate of like which one is the more important one. And E3 has had its up years and its down years. E3 has already done the rise and fall of Rome like 3 times. But yeah, there are a couple of big shows where the various gaming companies coordinate their announcements. There's 3 big players at this point in the console game space, and they're all vying with each other. It's different than like Apple or Macworld keynotes used to be, where these 3 companies all want to outdo each other at the same events, right? Mm-hmm. And they want to. It's not collusion, but they're all trying to like say, when are we going to announce our big things? Are we going to announce our console at the same time as the other people? Are we going to announce our exclusive games? What order do the press events go in? Who wins E3? Who had the best E3? But as someone who plays games and who plays very few of them compared to like actual real avid gamers, read People Without Jobs, or
I wasn't going to say it.
Both. That would be me if I was a younger man.
It can't be a lifestyle though, right?
I'm practically. We'll talk about Destiny in a distant future show, but Destiny is a lifestyle as well, and I'm kind of living it. But anyway, for those people, they play a lot of games, so it almost doesn't matter as much which they're going to play all of the major games, or at least check out or rent or look at all of the big games and maybe a few minor ones. I only play a few games to completion a year at this point, and so I want them. I want to make it count. So I'm basically spending the whole year waiting for like this one game that I'm interested in to see what it's like, or this handful of games to decide which one I'm going to buy and play. And so these type of announcements take on more importance to me, because it's not like, oh, well, new games come out, I buy them, I try them. New games come out, I buy them, I try them. It's like, I got to plan my year. What handful of games am I going to play? Which is even more different than movies. Because movies, you're like, okay, what 3 movies am I going to watch in 2016? No one's thinking about that. If a movie comes out, you go see it, right?
Well, can I ask you, I'll skip over the history stuff. Can I ask you just a couple general questions to orient myself?
Are we skipping over your history? Because I do want to go back.
Oh, no, I would be happy to. But just so I know, when you talk about the big, is it Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony?
You got it.
Okay. And when you're looking at those companies, okay, here's another one. Like what do they call them? AAA games? Is that the term? That's like the popular games? Is that,
yeah, and by the way, the company's names, that's console games. There's also PC games, and there are other companies involved in there, but we don't overcomplicate it. We're just
but like, yeah, for now, yeah. So are there some games that are just for one platform? It seems like Nintendo makes a lot of stuff that's just for Nintendo.
Yeah, there's less of that than there used to be, but there are what they're called platform exclusives. There are far fewer of them now than there used to be, because it used to be that the hardware varied, especially in the console space, much more than it does now. And eventually companies just figured out you can make more money if you sell your game to more people.
Right.
And so they have what they call timed exclusives, where it's exclusive to platform X for a short period of time. And then, of course, there are the first-party titles that Microsoft is not going to make games for Sony's console.
But like EA would ideally like to make games that you can play anywhere.
Yes, and they do. And Ubisoft and all these other companies, because you just make more money.
Sure.
Like Destiny, we just mentioned, is available for 6 consoles, right?
And then, but something like Last Guardian, is that going to be for PlayStation only?
That is basically a first-party title.
Okay.
It's PlayStation only.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but there are far fewer of them than there used to be. Used to be almost all games were a single platform, but now that is not the case.
And when you're deciding, it sounds like Nintendo. Well, you tell me. Like when you're deciding, what consoles? I guess. Well, let's say you're going to be a person who wants to buy a console or maybe two consoles. How do you decide based on what games are available? Like, are there certain personality types? How do you decide what kind of console you go with?
Yeah, it really helps to know. Of course, it helps to know which specific games you want to play, because that just tells you immediately. Like, if you want to play The Legend of Zelda, you know exactly what console you're getting. That is only if it's a Nintendo title. You're getting a Nintendo console. That's it, right? If you like to play racing games, now it becomes a little more difficult. Well, racing games, that's a genre. There's racing games available for every platform. Do you want realistic racing games or sort of cartoony, arcadey racing games? If you say realistic, you probably eliminated Nintendo, then you're looking at Xbox or PlayStation. There are some platform exclusive racing games. There are also ones that are on both platforms. You'd have to, try them out to see which ones you like, and it's a more difficult decision. If you don't know what kind of game you like, then it's just black magic voodoo. Like, it's very difficult. And realistically, speaking from a position as someone with a decently paying job and everything, when you're a kid, it's a big deal of like which console you're going to beg your parents to get you for Christmas. When you're an adult, you can buy two consoles. If you have a good job over the course of a year or 2 years, you can buy two consoles. Especially if you don't play a lot of games. So like they're a couple $100 each. Like for people who buy like, max every 3 years, a couple $100 on a console isn't that big of a deal. But if you are more resource constrained, that if you are a kid or just don't have that kind of disposable income to spend on things, it can feel fraught. But I feel like that's kind of missing the point, because every console has great games for it, right? And especially if you're a new gamer, if you get quote unquote the wrong console, like, I can only afford to spend my $300 of $400 of fun money this year, maybe realistically $500 if you're going to buy some games and stuff. That's it, and I spent it on this console. And now I look at the other console, and that exclusive game for the other console I really want to play, and I can't. There are great games for every console.
But it seems like PlayStation and Xbox are like the more serious gamer platforms.
There is a long history, cultural thing behind that, and also technological angle to it. But yeah, you're getting the gist of it. But the reasons for it are strange, and things like that can change, and Nintendo has tried to change it a few times. It always seems to circle back. It's kind of like Apple's always going to kind of be Apple. Nintendo has a certain corporate spirit that pretty much no matter what they do tends to come through. Mm-hmm. And the technological decisions that they have made are further isolating them and further making sure that they continue to be the unique thing that they are, and don't become like their competitors, for better or for worse. Which is
a benefit and a deficit, it sounds like, because they're going to make games that you only play on Nintendo, and Nintendo's going to be Nintendo.
Yeah, because they're fielding hardware that is a generation behind the other one. So lots of things are just, if a EA wants to make a game on every platform, if they want to make a version for the Wii U, which they probably don't because the Wii U didn't sell that many, but if they wanted to, they have to make a cut down version for the Wii U. And it's annoying to make a game like, well, these are roughly the same capabilities, and then this other machine here has massively less capabilities. How are we going to make one game that runs all three of them? It's always going to be compromised on another one. And then you're like, well, should we compromise the entire game engine? So it's because if you have an idea for a feature that's going to affect gameplay, say you're making some kind of game where dynamic lighting and shadows are an important part of gameplay. You can't just say, well, on the Wii U, we just won't have the shadows. Because if that's part of your game, it's like, well, you've broken the game. You need shadows. It's part of the game. Maybe it's a stealth mechanic. Maybe it's like whatever. Mm-hmm. And so then you're like, oh, well, can we make something that works on all three of them? Maybe we can make our shadows kind of crappier, but then it makes crappy for everyone. And realistically speaking, it's not an issue this time because the Wii U hasn't been selling that well. And people who own Wii U's mostly buy Nintendo first-party games these days. But look at the Wii. It's the opposite. The Wii sold massive volumes, and then everyone was motivated to make terrible cut-down versions of their games for the Wii because there were so many of them in the market that it was worthwhile doing. Similar strategy. Make a weird, goofy machine that appeals to quote-unquote everybody more than the other ones do. Two very different results.
This episode of Reconcilable Differences is brought to you in part by Harry's. Harry's offers high-quality razors and blades for a fraction of the price of the big razor brands. You just go to harrys.com and use the promo code DIFFS, DIFFS, to save $5 off your first purchase. Let me tell you a story. It's a story about shaving. Because Harry's was started by two guys who wanted a better product without paying an arm and a leg. They make their own blades from their very own factory. It's an old blade factory in Germany, the old country. They like the place so much, they bought it. And these are high-quality, high-performing German blades, crafted by shaving experts, the only people that you would want making your shaving products. They give you a better shave that respects your face and your wallet. And how often does that happen? Be honest. Harry's offers factory direct pricing at a fraction of the big brands. Harry's blades are about half the price of what you'd expect to pay. Plus, you don't have to wait around for some kid to bail your costly blades out of the drugstore's Supermax razor prison. You order Harry's supplies, they ship them directly to your door, and you're done. Boom, you are shaving. Their starter set is an amazing deal. For $15, you get a razor, moisturizing shave cream or gel, plus 3 blades. And when you need more blades, they're just about $2 or less each. 8-pack, $15. A 16-pack, just $25. That's value, my friend. I'd say Harry's blades are comparable in quality to the kind of blades you'd get at the drugstore, maybe the fusion blades that are made by a company that rhymes with Schmalett. The best price that I see on Amazon for those kinds of blades, 12-pack is about $41. 12 Harry's blades are only $20. That's half the price of the Schmaletts. Great packaging, nice heavy handle. It's just classy act all around. With Harry's, you get the convenience and ease of ordering online, high-quality blades, great handling shaving cream, excellent customer service, half the price of the big brands. It's a no-brainer, you guys. So get started with that set. Includes a handle, 3 blades, and shaving cream. Just $15 shipped to your door. So please go to harrys.com and make sure to use the promo code DIFFS, D-I-F-F-S. That lets you tell them that you heard about it here. Save $5 off your first purchase. Thank you so much to Harry's for making me look like a little bit less of a grotesque homunculus and for supporting reconcilable differences. Okay, I just have 1.5 more questions. And forgive me if this is not... Journey, Last Guardian, what's the one? Flight of the Cyclops? What's the people who make Last Guardian? What's theirs called?
But the people who make Last Guardian, you've got Eco, Shadow
Colossus?
of the Colossus.
Something Colossus?
Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay, it was a different X-Men. And I don't know, like Destiny, Journey, those kinds, is that a genre? Or like, what about Last of Us? Are those all kind of a genre?
No, that you've spanned many different things there.
Okay.
It's kind of like rock, where you have indie rock. What the hell is indie rock? Right, you know what it is, right?
Well,
but
yeah. If you say
like,
to somebody Swedish, like melodic Swedish death metal versus Norwegian black metal, you go, well, I'm sure those are virtually the same. And I'm like, well, let me play you 4 songs, and you can pretty definitely tell that these are 2 very different genres. It sounds the same, but it really ain't.
And like indie rock is like, well, does that mean they're not signed to a major label because they're independent? Well, not necessarily. Like, right. You could have someone who's on a major label, but you would say he's an indie rocker. Well,
that's a strange term. It sounds like you can only buy it with a Discover card or something. It's such a weird way to put that.
Yeah, so indie games is a term originally origined the same way. Oh, they're not signed up with the big publisher or whatever. They're independent game makers. But at this point, lots of games from big studios, very closely associated to big game makers, are still called indie. What it stands in for is what I've said on other podcasts I call artsy-fartsy games, right? The P.T. Anderson type games where...
Is that what you call something like Journey?
Yes,
okay.
Our Journey is 100% an artsy-fartsy game.
Okay.
As opposed to, like the Jurassic World or not Transformers. I don't want to be insulting to other games. So there are the Transformers movies of games, but like the big, broad, widely appealing games that you've heard the names of. Those are
Kessel Wolfenstein.
You're dating yourself a little bit there. Although there was a remake of that and several other.
But I think that's the thing. Is my problem is I think of it as first-person shooters and like beautiful soap operas and like not soap operas, but you know what I mean, beautiful like cinematic movies or cinematic games.
Yeah, those are kinds of games, but there are many more. Like Journey, definitely artsy-fartsy games. Gone Home. Did you listen to the Incomparable about Gone Home?
What's the one with walking through the desert? That's Journey, right?
No, yeah. Anyway, there are all sorts of varieties of games, and every year there are a couple of darling artsy-fartsy indie games, whether they're indie or whether they're actually indie or not. Like off the beaten path, not your usual fare, not going to see advertised on during the Super Bowl or on MTV. That get critically acclaimed, just like movies. Critically acclaimed movie that almost no one sees, but the people who love it desperately. And I have definitely drawn to those type of games. But I also play games like Destiny, which is like one of the biggest games ever made. It cost $500 million to develop.
You're kidding?
Right? Yeah. So
oh my God.
that is not an artsy fartsy game. For $500 million, you don't make an artsy fartsy game. That is a 10-year enterprise that is undertaken with a massive amount of money, and experienced game developer with hundreds of developers and artists all working on this game over years and years. Those are basically the ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
And I like things all along the spectrum at various points. So I'm not limiting myself, but I do tend to like the artsy fartsy games much more than your average gamer, I think. And so all those ones, like Journey of the Last Guardian, Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Gone Home, even things like Brothers, which was also on the Gone Home episode, definitely more indie artsy fartsy.
Okay.
Last of Us, fairly broadly appealing, a little bit of a connection to the sort of indie world in terms of spirit, but production-wise, just a massive game. And then Destiny is like just the other end of the spectrum.
Okay. I have
games.
tons and tons more, but I don't want to overwhelm you. That's enough to start.
Right.
Probably.
So now, for you, we want to know where it went wrong for you.
Yeah.
Because you've mentioned video games on past episodes, but you had Atari 2600?
No. So you want a quick whistle stop tour?
Yeah.
Let's see. What the very first video games? I mean, I guess I played Pong on people's TV sets and in I guess there were always arcades because of pinball. I enjoyed pinball a lot when I was a kid. I played Pong. The first ones I remember really getting into, I got into Space Invaders. I found it frustrating, but I liked Space Invaders. I played, I guess, Space Wars. I played all those like weird games, but I mean, it was even then, I think it was still 25 cents a crack. It was very, very costly. So I didn't play a lot. When did I get into it? The pizza place that we went to got Donkey Kong. And forget, you're gonna have to help me out with the dates. I'm gonna jumble these dates because I'm gonna be John Syracuse with the dates. Donkey Kong was so graphically amazing. Oh wait, let me go back a little bit. Oh, Red Baron. Some of the Atari games, like Red Baron and Lunar Lander, I really like. I don't know if you know those games, but they're super vectory looking Atari games.
Yep.
Okay, so you're familiar with that. Like Red Baron, when it first came out, really felt really like incredible. It felt amazing that thing worked. I like that. Oh my God, there was this one. I totally forgot about this till right now. Seawolf? It was a submarine game.
Yep, I know it.
It was something Wolf.
It was an arcade game. It had like a periscope type thing.
I in that year of military school, I cannot, that and Joker Poker pinball, I can't tell you how much money I blew on those games. But I think the first game that I like fell madly in love with. So anyway, I played tons of those. And, I guess that would be like, 80, 81. 81 is when it really felt like it started to blow up, which would be when I was in 8th grade. 8th and 9th grade is when I really started, to the extent that I could afford it, which was hardly at all, I got really into arcade games. So, I mean, I liked Defender a lot, but Stargate was like a way of life for me. Robotron, I loved Robotron. I was terrible. What's the one where you spin around? Not Gravatar.
Tempest?
Yeah, Tempest. Tempest I found incredibly frustrating.
The one where you spin around.
You spin around and the little yellow walker guys come up. Well, no, I'm not trying to sandbag here. I'm not trying to be like hipster Merlin. I'm telling you, like, I wish I could afford to blow more money every Friday night on those games. But like Stargate, there was one near my friend Ricky's house, and we would go and we would just watch people play Stargate. We would play Stargate. We would buy books about Stargate. I was utterly obsessed with Stargate. And all of those that came along. But I think probably there's a tie for me, I would have to say, between maybe Robotron and Galaga. I also like Gorf, but in a more pure way, I really like Galaga. So Galaga and Robotron were my two go-tos. And that was, by that point, I didn't have a lot of dough. And I guess, when did the Star Wars one come out? The one where you sat down.
Yeah,
was that like 80?
Sometime shortly after Star Wars, I imagine. Yeah.
Well, there was a really amazing one that I think cost 50 cents. I think it cost $2.
Yeah, sit down one with the cool controller. With
Yep,
you twist it and turned it like a steering wheel as well.
But like so many things, I mean, to get this first chapter over, as far as arcade games, by the time I went to college, then I started playing what's the two guys hitting each other, Street Fighter? I played that at the Subway a lot. We used to play a lot of, whatever that game was in 1985 or 6. Where two guys fight each other. We've played that a lot. Double Dragon? Double Dragon.
That is a genre of game, but yes.
Well, it's either Double Dragon or Street Fighter. We used to play that a lot. And then I went to college, and like there's like it was such a big pivot. My interest in music went like through the roof, and I played pool more than that at that point.
So when did you go to college?
Started in '86, graduated in '90.
So you were there. You were around.
Tetris. We played Tetris. That was
for the Nintendo. Atari was one thing, right? Atari was, if you didn't have an Atari in your house, maybe you missed out on this, but it was so primitive. But it sounds like you were mostly in the arcade mode where you go to a place and pay money for the games, which is a very different experience than having it in your house and being able to play for free.
I can answer this super quickly. Yeah, so my friend Sam, one of my very best friends in junior high and high school, had an Atari. They were pretty well off, and they had an Atari, and they had some of the great games, some of the terrible games. They had Superman, they had E.T., they had Raiders of the Lost Ark, you had Moon Patrol, you had Pitfall. Why do I remember this? But like we would mainly play, and then when Yars' Revenge came out, that was like mostly what we wanted to play. And so, yeah, he had all of those, and I was there like almost every weekend at his house staying over, and we would play that when we could. And then, yeah, you're right. Then later on, Sam started college, dropped out, and at some point he got his NES, whatever, that first Nintendo system with the Marios.
And did you play that over there?
No, I mean, I looked at it, but I have to say, even at whatever, the tender age of 19 or 20, I looked at that and I was like, Sam, you're a grown man. You're a volunteer fireman. Like, what are you doing playing video games?
What happened? Yeah, I think the timing was not quite right for you. If you were younger when the NES, because Atari was so primitive, and like,
it was still certain games I think really held up. I mean, Superman was silly, but like stuff like Moon Patrol was pretty fun.
Yeah. The problem was a lot of the early Atari games were modeled on or attempted clones at games that were designed to make you plunk quarters into them, right? And it was limitations.
Pac-Man being a great example of like, oh my god, Pac-Man was. I don't think Pac-Man's a super fun game. It's like a primitive Dragon's Lair. It's like there's not that much to it, but like playing it on the Atari was useless. But we were so excited when Pac-Man came out because it was like we can play Pac-Man at home for free.
But then you realize that the games lose a little bit of something when there's like no money on the line. Like you design a game differently to be designed to eat quarters versus designed to be played. That's why so Donkey Kong was an arcade game.
Yeah.
But it's not the game that launched the NES into the vaunted place that it currently occupies.
Wasn't it technically the franchise that launched it? I mean, don't the Mario guys come from?
Yeah, no, it's all connected. But like the game, Super Mario Brothers plays very differently than if you had designed it to be an arcade game for you to put your core. And there was, of course, there was Mario Brothers arcade game, also very different than the one that was on the console. But so once that's why I feel like Atari didn't have the tech to go much beyond the coin op and had a lot of the hangover from coin op. And it was mostly just like, I mean, people enjoyed those games and they were great. And like you said, it's like, oh, I don't have to put in quarters and play it. But I think the real revolution in the U.S. anyway, it was was Nintendo Entertainment System, where they had games that were utterly unlike things that you played in the arcade. Even though arcade still had better graphics and everything, these were games that were not designed to take quarters from you.
Well, I do remember at the time, the music alone, which sounds so funny and retro now, was so entertaining. I mean, the composition of these funny little songs, even then I was like, oh, this is pretty amusing. A good case of the kind of Pixarization, like doing the most you can with what you have, with the mechanics and the music and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it helped that it was super talented, legendary game designers and musicians behind making those first few games. But that's you were old enough by that point that you looked on it as something that you had like gone through and were coming out of. At that point, it was very difficult to have the perspective that video games would be a lifelong pastime in the same way that reading books and watching movies, where you're like, well, you still watch movies? That's a kid's thing. Like, that was not a
thing. I mean, that would be like asking me why I'm not into Barbies or Army Men. Like, you would just be like, are you, well, seriously, like, yeah, I don't need diapers either. Like, why would I play video games?
And as it was a young medium. Like, the very first, video game machines that you could buy in the home were not that many years old.
But it was also just like how it's in the same way that I'm always ranting about like the difference between thoughts about screens when I was a kid versus now. I mean, you have to understand, like, no parent liked their kids playing video games. And when you got to the point when you were old enough to make those decisions, I mean, 25 or 50 cents a game, really, you could be spending that on beer or records. So yeah, it was bad timing in that sense, for sure. And where were you then?
Well, I wasn't allowed to have video game consoles for the aforementioned reasons about that.
Right.
rot your brain, all
This
this
isn't
other
long.
stuff.
This isn't long after the Mac Plus either. You've already got a Mac Plus.
Right.
In your
So
house.
I'm playing games on my Mac, which is a very narrow subspecies of gamers, the Mac gamers. Like, and I was a forced Mac gamer because I wasn't allowed to have video game consoles. And I love my Mac and I love playing games on it, but they were definitely a different type of games. But my friends all had the, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis and stuff, and I would play over their house. Playing over other people's houses is not the same as having it yourself. Because if you have it yourself, you can spend that Saturday where you literally spend 8 hours sitting in the basement in front of your thing trying to play The Legend of Zelda. If you go visit someone's house, rare that you're there for 8 hours or more. Or the stories of like kids waiting for their parents to go to sleep and then sneaking down to the basement and playing all night long to continue playing a game. Especially the games that didn't let you save. You have to just pause and leave the television turned off and then make sure your siblings or parents don't accidentally bump the thing and unpause it and let you die.
Oh my God.
Or unplug it or whatever. Like that, I didn't have that experience. So not owning a console gets you. But I was obsessively into video games. I loved arcade games. I would go to the arcade and just spend all my money on tons of games that I was not good at. And that's why I would eat all my money. I'd go to my friend's house and play their consoles. I would play video games on my Mac. I was very, very into it. I never thought I was going to outgrow it because I had a hunger for video games, and the same way that I was into like computers, how the technology would improve at such a rapid pace, and I was into that, and I would read all the magazines about what the next Mac and the next CPU and the next graphics card. I had the same thing about video game hardware. Next arcade games, next home consoles.
just what young John needed, another interest to learn everything about.
Yeah, well, but it's the same. It's very similar. It's like, what can we do with technologies? Because I was alive for the Atari 2600. My friend had an Atari 2600. I played Kaboom in his basement. Played Night Driver and all these other things, right? I was alive for that, and I was also alive for the revolution from 2D into 3D. And it's like, why? Anything is possible, right? And you read science fiction books, and you're like, it's going to happen. Like that time of advancement in that short a period of time makes you think, if I just extrapolate along this line, we'll be. We didn't have the word for it, but we'll be in the Matrix shortly. And, things have tapered off a little bit. But I was obsessively into it. So I never had the sort of vacation from it that you did. It's like, well, the video games are things kids do. Now I have better things to do with my time. And maybe it sounds like you never made it back until all of a sudden you woke up one day and all the adults are playing video games and taking them seriously. And you're not in that.
Right. But you're absolutely right. But by not paying continuous attention to that stuff, I mean, it's not really maybe so different from the way people looked at what I will call microcomputers, where you go like, oh God, I'm so tired of hearing about computers, right? Through the like early 80s. I'm so tired of hearing about computers. And like pretty soon you're like, wow, I guess I really need to learn about computers. And like, maybe it's not quite as profound as that, but that's kind of how I feel, where I'm like, like I've said in a variety of places, I feel like I really missed something, and I'm starting to realize I was probably almost not totally wrong, but like very wrong. Like I missed something, and now I need to catch up. And I think it would be fun. Plus, I got a kid.
I think it's more profound than missing out on computers, because computers are not a thing that I think, like, if you're just like, well, I'm not interested in computers, and then you wake up one day like, oh, everyone knows about computers. You don't really need to know about computers. Computers will come down to you, right? Like, if you don't know anything about computers, eventually you'll find yourself using one at work, and you'll figure out enough how to use it enough to send someone email and browse the web and play solitaire. And then, eventually when everyone has a smartphone, your next one will be a smartphone too, and you figure out how they work. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not something you need to be into, but games as an artistic medium, it's like, sort of opting out of the culture. Like, oh, I never watch live theater. Like, that's just not a thing I do. And I don't think, if you just cut that out as, I don't see any value in it. I think it's silly that other people do it. And I'm just going to ignore it. You will lead a less rich life. Like, if you're just, maybe even not live theater, you're just cutting out an entire, like, I never watch movies or television. I don't watch films medium at all.
Wow, as I sit here, that seems like an incredible stretch, but I want to hear more.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to say, like, what's worse? If you just ignore computers your whole life, eventually, like, you don't have to be a computer expert. You're going to use them in your life or whatever. But you can ignore, for example, television. Like, I just never watch television at all, and I think, like, and no one's going to be like, well, okay, you may not be into television, but you're going to end up having to watch it for your job. And, you're going to, no, you don't, you can just not watch television at all. And that loss of, like, deciding not to consume this form of art at all, you can do that and you'll be missing out. Whereas computers, you can't do that. Like, it's like saying, I don't like pavement. Well, tough luck. Like, it's everywhere, you know? So that's what I'm saying that I think is a more of a loss, because
Right.
The other technology, I mean, and think of another technological thing that you didn't miss out on was, like, you had, what is that? The G1, the first Android smartphone. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. You were right on the cutting edge of that. It's like, hey, mobile things that can do interesting stuff. You know, you've always been interested in tech and the Mac and stuff like that. I'm interested in the idea of a thing that I can carry around that can do more than what I have. Right. So you didn't miss out on the iPhone. You were right there. You were, ahead of the curve even. But if you just paid no attention to it, you'd probably still have an iPhone now. You'd be like, whatever, this is my phone. I call people on it. I can text. Like,
Right.
It's not a big deal. But no one is shoving a video game into your hands. No one is, like, even though people around you are playing, apparently your friends are not having an
That's an
intervention
interesting continuum, though, because when you talk about a phone, well, like purely a phone, like in the classic sense, like your friends, if your friends actually like you, they would pressure you to have a phone, like, and to be available. Like,
That's what I was going to say. Like, why are your friends not getting you into games?
I don't have that many friends, but also think about, I think maybe another example. I mean, do you think it's on the same level as texting? Like, just going, I don't text. Like, today you kind of have to text. Everybody texts now.
There's a social aspect to that as well. Like, I mean, it's more like, and this is actually a more realistic one, I don't read books. And you see all those terrible statistics about how many people graduate high school and they never read another book, right? But I mean, they make you read them in school anyway. But, like,
Right.
Yeah, some people just aren't big readers and don't read fiction, don't read nonfiction, don't read anything at all. And it's a shame to just have that experience just entirely cut out of your life. And video games, I feel like, are elevated to at least the level of movies and TV about this point. Maybe not the level of books, just for historical reasons, but, fast forward a few hundred years, it'll all be one big soup.
Well, I think it hasn't taken very many years for somebody I really respect, Roger Ebert, for his pronouncement to go from, that's an interesting point, to like, I don't know. I think maybe video games can be art.
He got trapped by his own. Like, I think he just made an offhand comment that he thought everyone would agree with, and they're not art in the form that he understands best, and so it's hard to believe that anything can be art when it shares
I think it's
so
even
little.
I think it's even simpler than that. I mean, as somebody who's in his same relative boat, that's got the stink of, you've not really seen video games, have you? In that case, right?
Yeah, that too. Like, trying to engage with them, like, oh, I should get you to play this game. That one of the things they had him do was, like, that someone had him play Shadow of the Colossus. Like, this is the worst thing you could possibly do. Someone who doesn't know video games.
That's not a beginner kind of game, is it?
Throw them in the deep end and say, yeah, this is what. That's And there is that's the other thing. But there is a literacy to gaming.
I so get that now.
Like I'm trying to think of the Merlin remedial video game curriculum. And it's not to, hey, play these great games that I love. Like, you can't do that. It's like, someone who just learned how to read and just say, all right, Shakespeare, go. Like, you don't. Right. That's not how it works. You have to start with Three Little Pigs or whatever.
No, I'm very interested in that, and I'm very open to that. But I mean, I get it every day now. Where now, it used to be my daughter really wanted to. She still likes to watch TV, but when she comes home, she really wants to play Minecraft on the iPad, just creative mode on iPad. But like, I walk in and I look and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm making a roller coaster in my house. I'm like, you're what and you're what? And she's like, she's built this palace and she figured out, like, she hasn't read a book on this. And I know, listen, you guys, shut up. I know you have kids who are great at Minecraft. What I'm telling you is my daughter's exposure to Minecraft is having an iPad and having friends. Like that, she's not like a Minecraft person, but she somehow has the converse. She's able to just click around and figure this thing out on her own in a way I would never attempt to do that. I would spend 6 weeks just trying to train myself on the tools, and she's just going out and trying stuff.
The tools.
Because you got to.
It's not a CAD program. Yeah, no, little kids just figure stuff out. I mean, speaking of CAD programs, I remember when I was a kid and had various. When I was finally getting into illegal software, I had a very expensive 3D modeling program. I think it was called Form Z, like the word form and then a capital Z.
That sounds familiar.
And not user-friendly at all.
Well, they were awful. They were so awful.
You could make 3D shapes with it. And I just sat there in front of that program and figured out how to use it and made this big, giant, sophisticated model of a giant robot, of course, from an anime show. And I remember thinking of that years later when I was struggling to learn how to use some much less complicated program. It's just when you're younger, either you have way more time And like, what else do you have to do? You just keep banging your head against this until you figure it out, or you're just better at learning things, and it's probably both.
I was still doing that in my mid to late 20s, though, when I would occasionally be gifted with a CD-ROM full of stuff from a friend. And I would just go, oh my God. And I would open up and it's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I would just sit there and play with, was the Pixar one, Render Man? What's the one where you make the figures?
Yeah, Render Man.
And I would just, like there was nothing conceivable in the entire world where I could turn that into something that was a useful thing to know. Like I didn't even need it for courtroom exhibits. I just wanted to sit there and like learn every aspect of that program, or that goofy Adobe one for making 3D objects. I was utterly obsessed with those. And I would sit there all day. I didn't have a manual or anything. I had a CD-ROM and some serial numbers. And I would just sit there, and I was utterly obsessed. That's how I learned Quark. This episode of Reconcilable Differences is brought to you in part by Hover.com. Hover is quite simply the best way to buy and manage domain names. Hover gives you exactly what you need to find the perfect domain for your new idea. And then they take all the hassle and confusion out of getting that name registered. Simply, safely, securely, and privately. Of course, Hover has all the top-level domains that you'd expect, all the classics, .com, .co, .net, .me, but they also have all those great new TLDs you've been hearing about, .buzz, .poker, .farm, and yes, you can even buy domains ending in .pizza. You're welcome. Here's the thing. Hover really is different from other registrars in just so many ways. At Hover, there are no mystery meat upsells or creepy add-ons. You get a smart control panel, plus Whois Privacy is always included for free on every domain that supports it. Hover even offers a free valet transfer service, so you can skip all the hassle of trying to move your domains over from where they're currently registered. And believe me, some registrars just love to make that as difficult as they can. All you need to know is that Hover takes your work and your business seriously, and it shows in everything they do. If you ever need a hand, Hover has the best customer support around, highlighted by their beloved no wait, no hold, no transfer phone service. So when you call, an actual real person will pick up the phone and help you out. If you dig around a little more, you'll find so much more to Hover, so much great stuff, volume discounts for bulk domain renewals. You can get custom email addresses, storage and forwarding. It's all in there. So if you're in the market for some sweet new domains, or you're ready to move your current domains to a place that treats you like an actual human, please try Hover. You can get 10% off your first purchase and show your support for our program by going to hover.com and using the very special offer code corrections at checkout. Corrections. Our thanks to Hover for making pretty much everything about domain names a breeze, and for supporting Reconcilable Differences.
Yeah, but so for games, it's like that a little bit, but do you remember the hypercritical, I think, episode where I talked about the skill barrier to enjoyment of video games?
I don't remember that one, but I'll find it.
Maybe it wasn't hypercritical. I don't know. I'm not bad. Anyway, at various points in some other podcasts, I talked about, unlike other forms of art, I think it was hypercritical, unlike other forms of art, where maybe you have some minimum bar, like you need to be literate to read, but things like movies and televisions, you just basically need eyes and ears, some life experience, and you can, or live theater for that matter, or storytelling. Like, for the most part, if you are functional in enough of your senses and have lived any amount of life and are sort of vaguely self-aware, you can enjoy these forms of art. You know, someone can tell you a story and you can listen to the story and be caught up in the story and enjoy it. And theater and movies and TV, but video games, you can't just throw someone down in front of a video game and expect them to get the intended experience out of it. There's something that you have to
Is that still true?
Be able to do. Oh, yes, definitely. And there's a certain mechanical skill that you need to have to play the game. And the game's not fun if you can't play it. And some games are sort of, very accessible and can be picked up by anybody. But there are other games that are actually very complicated, and there's not really an equivalent in most other genres. Like, there are movies that are like, well, you can't understand this movie unless you've read all this French literature and understand the period that it's coming from and know all this background and context.
Right.
But that's knowledge. That's not physical coordination and skill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is still a background, but, you can learn it. You can study it. But it's different than coordination. I'm not even talking about people who are like, have disabilities and just literally can't play the games for a variety of reasons, or have extreme difficulty playing certain genres of game. Just regular, completely able-bodied people. Some of them are just never going to have the dexterity to play a certain type of game, or more likely not never going to have it, or they're never going to have it because they're never going to be motivated enough to acquire it. If they didn't acquire it when they were a child, when you got lots of free time and and your brain is very malleable, it's kind of like people who are adults and still can't swim. It's much more difficult to teach them to swim than take a kid
like learning a
and
language.
teach
Like a
them how to swim.
5-year-old can pick up Spanish easier than a 15-year-old in some ways.
Yes, yeah, no, and with the video games, like, again, it's not that you can't do it when you're older. It's just that, like, it's not fun to do it. So why would you spend your time like, oh, I'm going to buckle down? And I mean, at least swimming, you're trying to prevent yourself from drowning, right? You're like, well, this is an important life skill. In case I fall off a boat, I should really do this, right? But video games, like, why would I do this thing that is not fun for a really long time with the promise of potential fun afterwards? So that's the skill barrier to enjoying video games. It's going to keep people away if they don't have that. And that's not ignoring all the other stuff. It's all the stuff I talked about, like with the knowing the political background in French literature and the history of this artist and stuff like that. That exists in video games too. That's the other kind of literacy. Do you understand the genre, the history of the genre, how this game is playing on the conventions of the genre, like all that kind of understanding the history of games to appreciate the current one. Like, even modern movies do that. You have to sort of know something about the history of cinema to appreciate what this movie is doing. Like, what is it playing off of? What is it subverting? What is it enhancing? What is it, Video games have that too. And they also have a thing where you have to have really good hand-eye coordination to even play certain games, otherwise it gets frustrating. So that's why it's a difficult hobby to share with people, because they're used to all forms of art, or most forms of art, perhaps requiring deep knowledge, especially for the more obscure, snooty, highbrow cult stuff or whatever, but not requiring anything of you except to be there and to have some knowledge, some background, and then just let it like wash over you and be an experience. And games are participatory. You are making the art as much as you are experiencing it, and making it is not particularly easy. So in thinking of my a program for you to get you back into video games, it's very difficult to think of where you should start. A lot of the things I think of you starting with are not particularly fun. Like, I'm trying to think of a game that's not actually a very good game, but that would give you the literacy in a particular, the physical and contextual literacy in a particular genre, so that you can later appreciate the better game that I think you should play. But is that even fun for you? You're going to sit there and bang your head against the wall? Like, have you tried to play Minecraft? Have you,
No. In survival mode, no.
No, not just in creative mode. Just,
yeah.
Can you move around the world?
We'll grab two iPads and hop in, but she mostly wants me to leave and not touch her stuff. But yeah. I've done it a little. Yeah, it's it's really just play in the purest sense of the word. There's nothing. I mean, she says she's heard something about how you can't dig too deep or you get in trouble, but no, mostly she's just building stuff. It's Lego on an iPad mostly.
Yeah, so what I'm interested in from your perspective is simply acquiring the skill to move around the world. Like, have you tried to make anything?
Yeah. And I mean, I can kind of fly around a little bit and know where to land and find her in the world and stuff like that. But no, I mean, it took me a while without having to go and read, like figure out like, why is it I'm trying to make lamb chops, but instead I keep making glass houses. Like, it's, I need to change this tool and do this thing. And you hold it this long to kill lots of these blocks. And I just kind of figured that out mostly on my own and found it actually really entertaining.
So what I was thinking of was like, have you made a little house? Have you made a statue? Have you made any structure?
I have not. I've watched her do it for hours and hours, but I have not, no.
Because that, and the reason I bring that up is not because it's important for you to make a house or something. It's because if you have a plan, I'm going to make a miniature Eiffel Tower. You conceptualize it, and to execute it, you have to have a certain minimum amount of skill of positioning and moving yourself in the world.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So I see what you're saying. So like with her, like she's pretty good at figuring out like, here's where I have to stand in order to make this wall. And I don't know how she knows this stuff. She's like, okay, you got to make this cage at least 3 blocks high if you're going to keep stuff in there. Right. And like knowing where you're standing in the right place so that you're not blowing up this part. You're building this with this block and putting this by that and that kind of stuff. Orientation, basically, right?
Yeah, and a surprising number of people, especially people who don't have any experience with games, this is one of the hardest things to do, especially in 3D games.
I found it very frustrating. It was not nearly as intuitive as I expected, given my experience.
Right, like gamers all take it for granted, but if you just give the controller to, you're using your fingers on the iPad or whatever, like people can't keep track of where they even are in the world. Which direction am I facing? Who am I? And then to know what control to push to make your person go where you want them to go. Building something in Minecraft requires you to figure with something with a plan. I'm going to make the Eiffel Tower. You have a vision in your head of what you want it to look like. You may know exactly where the blocks want to go. You can picture it in your head. Now move your little dude to
Right.
put those blocks there. And that requires you to figure out all sorts of different positioning systems. And this is a super important skill because this is like the baseline. You do not want it. No one is going to enjoy a game if they can't position themselves in a 3D world. It is such a fundamental thing that they expect you to be able to do.
That's actually a really good point.
And you're doing it with your fingers, but there's also a mouse and a keyboard, and there's a controller, and those skills may not translate. This is the bottom level of like, I would never let you near any one of my beloved games without having the fundamentals.
I think that's entirely reasonable. So is my homework potentially, do you want to, you don't have to give it now, but you could think about some homework maybe for Minecraft. You don't have to do it now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what would be a good starter set.
We've got about 15 or 20 minutes before you got to go. And I have a couple things. And like, I don't want to ask you this because I have a feeling I know what the answer is, but you are understandably, actually weirdly like me, a big believer in like avoiding spoilers. Like, here's the thing, John. I have this feeling I'm probably never actually going to play The Last of Us. Is it really beneath me to sit and watch a playthrough of that? Because I kind of want to see what it's like.
Yeah, it's probably beneath you, and I'll tell you why. Not because I think I probably agree with you. You're probably never going to play the game. It's actually a fairly difficult game.
Somebody just sent me a link to what looks like a cinematic playthrough where it like looks like a movie, and so like I'd love to watch somebody play it. So what's your feeling on that?
My feeling on that is not that it's not that you should like save it like, oh, you'll never know, you might play it or whatever, you don't want to spoil it yourself. It's that that's not the game. Games are not movies. By watching that, you will know, like, quote unquote, what happens in the game, but that is so far from the game, because playing the game, like people who say, I don't like to play games, but I like to watch them. You may enjoy that. That may be a thing, but that's not video games. The experience of playing a game is so different than the experience of watching someone else play the game. Not to say watching someone play the game can also be fun, and it is a different thing.
But you're watching them, like, for example, is this one of the games where you like explore the house and stuff like that, and you like find clues?
It doesn't matter what kind of game it is. Every game, that you play, the playing of the game is the important part. Like, that's what gamers like. Of course, gamers like to watch other people play as well, but the experience changes profoundly. So you can't judge a game or say this is or isn't for me, or like you're missing more than half of the experience, because it's getting back to the dream thing we talked about. Like, it's not the things that happen in the dream that's the important. It's how you feel about them. Exactly the same thing in video games, and you feel very different when you are the one doing the things. And you have to be able to do this. You have to be able to suspend disbelief. You have to be able to actually get into the game. Gamers and kids have no problem with this, or like just like readers. Like, it's just a bunch of printed words on a page, but you get into it, and like all of a sudden you're there. And you're lost in a book like that. Imagine if you were making the story happen, kind of never-ending story style. That's right. A video game. And then obviously there is an overarching story, and some games let you, steer in one direction or the other. Some have a predetermined ending. Some have multiple endings. Some are completely open-ended. But no matter what the genre of game or how open or how closed it is, playing the game is the important part. And it's like a waste unless you just want to know what happens at the end of a game.
Right.
Or maybe if you've played lots of other games, you can imagine what it would be like playing the game. But I can give you the world's crappiest game with the world's crappiest graphics, and if you play it, you could be telling stories and having dreams about and recalling feelings of you playing that game years later, and you watch that Last of Us thing, nothing's going to stick with you. Like, it's not, because it's not as good as a good movie. Like, watching someone play a game, it's not.
Okay, well, I mean, my concern or my note is that, like, while I am super open to this, and I could see myself getting a console in the next however long. And if we have a little bit of time today, I'd still love to talk a little bit about The Last Guardian. But I see myself doing that, but I don't think I'm ever, anytime soon, going to become like a super serious, like, gamer.
You said that about comic books probably, too, at one point.
Yeah, I guess, but I'm pretty good at reading. So, like, that I can grok, and I like the pretty colors and stuff. But I mean, I guess I take your point, but we should come back to that. Can we talk about Last Guardian for a minute?
Sure.
No, you tell me. Oh, we got 12 minutes.
Yeah, no, we can. Although I think I'll save. Yeah, go ahead. Destiny and these Last Guardian games, we will talk more about in a future episode. But go ahead.
Well, then what do you want to talk about?
No, I want you to ask me what you want to ask about. I'm saying I have a lot to say about these games.
Okay. Well, I was watching Twitter. Well, I have so many questions about this because I was watching Twitter and everybody's freaking out and saying, oh my gosh, is John Siracusa okay? And I assume they're talking about the re-announcement. Help me understand what's going on with Last Guardian, because I went and my daughter and I watched this video twice. We both got pretty excited watching it, honestly. And I mean, that creature is Trico? No, what's it called?
We don't know the name of the creature, I don't think, or at least if I knew it, I have since forgotten it.
Tell me if you can, and I texted you about this last night because I went and watched it again, and I was like, it's that little video. I want to know more about it because it seemed kind of triumphant in ways that surprised me. Like I was really amazed at how they had like this pretty passably CGI body on the kid with a not creepy face on it, or it looked almost like a Miyazaki
CGI body. Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. No. All
That's
right.
not computer generated. What's making it? You know, monkeys. Like how do they make it?
All right, so the quick summary of the Eco stuff.
Okay, thank you.
A game on the PlayStation 2, which was many, many years ago. We're up to PlayStation 4 now, and there's every.
Oh, so this has already been a different game just a long time ago.
No, just stay with me. There's a game on the PlayStation 2 called Eco, ICO, made by a team of developers called Team Eco, led by a particular director whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because it's Japanese, but we'll put it in the show notes. It's an artsy-fartsy game. I loved it. I thought it was great. They made a second game also for the PlayStation 2 called Shadow of the Colossus, which was even more ambitious, that I also really loved. The PlayStation 3 came out. They announced a game for the PlayStation 3 called The Last Guardian from the people who brought you Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, those two games that you loved. Like, I basically bought a PlayStation 3 only for those two games. 100% worth it, just for those two games. So this same team is going to make you a new game. It's called The Last Guardian. It's got this crazy bird cat thing in it. It's got a boy. Aren't you excited about it? That was 2009. And since then, they showed some more trailers. Then it went away. Then you didn't know if it was going to come out. Then the trademark on the game expired. Then Sony said that was actually a mistake. And then the PlayStation 4 came out. So the game that I bought a PlayStation 3 for, I bought a PlayStation 3 just to play The Last Guardian. That was the sole purpose of me buying that machine.
What did you say, 2009?
2009 was the first trailer released. Right?
So really, it's been 6 years since it was announced?
Yes.
Oh my
and
God.
so now 6 years later, at E3, this is the first appearance of this game in many, many years. After the director has left Sony to go off do his own thing, it's like, well, who's even left developing the game? The director left, he said, well, my work on this project is done. But like, where's the game? Is there a date? Is it still alive? And Sony would be like, oh yeah, no, the game is still alive, but then people didn't believe. There's other games that have been in similar dev hell situations, to use the movie term, where it's in development for a really long time, and it's not a good sign for movies, right? If a movie's in development for 20 years, like even things like AI or whatever, it's usually not a good sign.
It's like a bridge loan in finance. You're like, well, that's not great. If you're like in turnaround or whatever, it's like,
Yeah, and these games don't sell a lot because they are artsy-fartsy games, but the people who love them, like me, really, really love them. And so now, E3 2015, they finally showed the game again. It really is coming out, in theory, for the PlayStation 4. Like, Sony wants to recoup its investment because the team behind it is like, even though the director has left or parted ways with Sony or whatever, I didn't think they would ever let this go because it has a built-in audience of people who are going to buy it, even if it's a small audience. They made more money by making PlayStation 3 remasters of the two PlayStation 2 games. I also bought the remasters, right? So that they're, have a little bit of money to keep things going there. But yeah, now it's coming out in 2016. And so, not to throw cold water on the excitement on Twitter and everything, but I think the first two trailers for this game, or the first few things they showed in like 2009, are better than this gameplay trailer. And I'm hoping that after the director left, that it doesn't become more conventional, because he's a weird guy and his games are weird in a particular way, and that gameplay footage was not weird in the same way that the previous trailers were. But it's too early to tell.
You think it's mainly there to show progress? Like this is still alive?
Oh, but it's definitely still alive. Like they're going to make it. They're going to ship it.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, like the idea is like it's showing like, hey, look, here's proof. Like this is actually happening.
Yeah, well, they just wanted. It's the first public showing of anything from the game in ages, right? So yes, this is a real game. It's on PlayStation 4. It looks a little bit different than last time, but to me, it looks different in an artistic manner, not in a tech manner, than the previous ones. It's hard.
Could you put like a couple notes in the document, and maybe for show notes? Could you show like, all I've seen is that one from whatever yesterday. Could you?
Yeah, I'll show. I mean, it's easier. I have all the things open tabs. It's easier to do a teaser. When you have a teaser for a movie, you don't need to really show anything. It just needs to be all about mood. It's easier to be arty when you do that. Gameplay footage is the hardest thing to be like. It's like the movie versus the teaser trailer. The trail. It's really easy to make an awesome teaser, trailer, and trailer. Like easier than making a movie that lives up to that trailer. Right. So in some respects, it's not fair to compare 5 minutes of gameplay footage with the trailers. but it just looks a little bit off to me. And so, not that I'm disappointed. I'm 100% going to buy the game. I will play it. I'm sure I will enjoy it. I just worry, like, if it's like Kubrick not doing AI, right? Could AI could still have been a good movie with Spielberg,
Right.
but it's very different than it would have been with Kubrick. And you're worried, like, say Kubrick had done AI for the most part, but then left before the movie was done and said, well, my work on AI is basically done, and someone else finished it out for him. Oh, and by the way, they finished it out and they did it. They like reshot it in 4K or something, or, there's no real good equivalent here. But anyway, they're bringing this thing to the PlayStation 4, originally conceived and presumably substantially developed as a PlayStation 3 game. The director is gone. I'm concerned about the artistic direction a little bit. I'm not, again, I don't want to be a bummer.
No, right. But I mean, the director of a video game is not unlike the director of a film or like a showrunner for a TV show. It's the creative head.
Yeah, and it's not regimented as it is in other industries. Some people who are like, the guy behind the game, how hands-on are they? Are they writing the whole game themselves, plotting it, doing everything about it, or are they just sort of nominally in charge of a game that's a sort of a group endeavor? Every dev team is different, so it's not like they're not roles like a TV showrunner that have formed to sort of like everyone knows what that is. Every quote-unquote director of a game works a little bit differently, but the guy behind Ico and Shadow of the Colossus it was like Kubrick. It had a very strong artistic hand. Like you could see in all of the games that he made, not that there were many of them, that a clear voice was coming through. You would know a game that was, like Wes Anderson, you know what I mean? Like, as opposed to even someone like Steven Spielberg, who has a style or whatever, but Wes Anderson, like, oh, that's a Wes Anderson movie. I can see that from a mile away.
Yeah,
right?
well, like you said, like Charlie Kaufman, like somebody or Spike Jonze, somebody where you go like, oh, I recognize that.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping a little bit of that isn't lost. But anyway, it's exciting. That I never stopped believing. So all the people are like, oh, you must be so happy. I always knew the game. But I knew they were, like, financially, like, why would they ever get rid of it? It would, they were going to make a game with this name. It was going to come out. They'd put too much effort into it. There's a built-in audience for it. I'm certainly going to buy it. I'll probably just keep buying it. And Journey's coming out with a PS4 port as well. Probably for your video game thing, maybe what I'm probably working you up to is to play Journey, which is a game that only takes 2 hours to play and has a very low skill barrier, but you're not close to ready for that. So don't even look at it. Okay. Don't read anything about it. Don't do anything.
Yeah, okay. So, can we pick up on video games next time?
We will, or we can, do something else and circle back to it. But there's much more to go on.
No. There's so much more. I can't even tell you how many questions I have. I have so many questions.
I should give you some form of homework. I'm not quite sure what you should build something in Minecraft and take a screenshot of it and put it in the show notes of either this show or the next one.
Can I have my daughter do it for me?
No, you can't.
Can I
actually do it yourself?
Can I take somebody else's?
Don't have her help you. Just wait till she's asleep. Pick up the iPad, have a plan, and execute it.
Okay.
And be ambitious. Don't make like a cube.
All right, I'll do it. And so I should avoid all these videos of video games.
You should, because it's really missing the point. It's kind of like reading the script to a movie.
You remember how you asked me? I shouldn't say this. You remember how you asked me about like whether my daughter's actually beating me at chess?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well here's the problem right now. We got a Wii U from a friend of mine for Christmas, and we dove in with both feet. I had added what I had added to my Amazon wish list was the Wii U with Mario Kart. And like we both immediately got super into it. Like I'm not good at video games, but I was like slightly better than her at it. And like she kind of won't have it. So like now neither of us is playing it. It just sits there because she doesn't like it unless she like has like she feels like she has a fair chance. She thinks it's unfair. So I was even like, you know what? Pick a dumb car. Have me play as a monkey. I don't care. Give me dumb tires. I'd like you get to pick. Like one slices and one picks. Like you make me the dumbest Mario Kart in the world. But I'm never gonna not play as well as I can because that wouldn't be cool. But that's part of the problem is that she doesn't want to play with me, and like I'm like, well, this is kind of the whole reason we play video games. It's like this is why we have sports. This is why we do these things to like be okay with, winning and losing and just playing. So that's part of the challenge with the video games from our house. Just to be candid.
Yeah, well, that's a competitive thing, and then the games don't. Again, there's cooperative games, there's single player games. Competitive games are difficult for kids because, like you said, they don't want to lose, or they feel intimidated where they're competing, and then their lack of skills on display is highlighted by the fact that you came in before them.
Yeah, and so maybe one thing we can do, I will try to come up with a plan for something. I will finish watching Fight Club. I will take my sleeping pill. I will watch the wrestling video. And then maybe we can slowly work into a regimen, like over time. Gosh, I hope you do this for more than 10 episodes. Maybe we'll work into a regimen where over time you can have me moving in a direction where, maybe by the spring of 2016, I can be playing video games.
Yeah, who knows? You could even play Last Guardian depending on how hard they make it.
Oh, I like that. I like that little
what I'm really trying to work up to in this run of episodes is I want to explain Destiny to you and have you understand what the hell is going on.
So it's a first-person shooter?
So much more. It's more of a lifestyle, really.
So I did the thing is I didn't do the basic homework. The most important part of the homework in going back and re-listening was that I not only play Minecraft, but that I have a plan in mind for something I want to build and then go in and try to execute on that. And I spent 30 minutes blowing up grass today. I didn't really get very far. I didn't even have a design. So I don't think it even counts as starting. I think I got to go back and start over. New world. Right?
Sure. Yeah. No, you can wait till you're inspired or whatever. Are you still just playing creative?
Yeah. My daughter just out of nowhere the other day went into survival mode, and she's still alive. She's enjoying it. I don't know how she picks this up. Like, I don't know how she has learned so much stuff. It's really weird. I don't know where she gets it from. Because she's not like watching YouTube videos. She's talking to people at school, I guess, and stuff, or camp. But like, she seems to be doing fine with it. It's really weird.
Yeah, kids can pick it up. It's a good game for kids. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, and it really is just a lot of fun. I mean, she plays with that more than Legos now. But yeah,
you don't have to clean up Minecraft. That's the key.
You don't step on a brown Minecraft in the middle of the night.
It's not the stepping up. It's the stepping on is for you. The cleaning up. Like, oh, everyone loves to play with Legos, but then there's the after part where Daddy is constantly telling you to clean up your stuff and you don't want to.
Do you struggle with that?
My kids do. I know how to clean up.
You've made your peace with it?
No, I haven't. The house is a mess eternally.
Oh my God, it's nonstop. I mean, it's amazing because my wife is not only she likes the house to be clean, she's really good at cleaning and she's really fast at cleaning. But we're both, she's super busy and I'm pretty busy and she's better at it than me and cares more. I do what I can to like keep the kitchen clean and stuff like that. But the family room is it's a disaster within like 2 days.
Yeah, my daughter can come into a room and just like, it's like you close your eyes for a second, you open them, and everything is off of every shelf and covering the floor. Like she can very quickly make a room impassable. Like you cannot, now you can no longer go through this room because the floor is covered with not like little things that you're going to step on, like large objects that make it literally impossible for you to walk.
And like big projects. I always think of that few frames of The Simpsons where Marge has spent hours cleaning the kitchen.
Yep, and the door swings. Yep,
and then but it swings back, it's a mess again. For my kid, like she will make a fort for a doll to sleep in out of comic boxes and sheets. And I'll be like, honey, like this is a fire hazard. Like this is actually kind of dangerous now. And then she starts making a house of cards, literally a house of cards, like in the one area that anybody can walk through. And she's frustrated when it gets knocked down. And then she goes and brings chairs in because she wants to start a secondary fort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's the thing, like this trail of things that get done. Oh, here's like a knitting project. Here's where I was coloring. Here's where I was making a book. Here's where I ate a snack. Like none of that stuff gets cleaned up. When they're done with whatever this activity is, it's just you move on to the next clear patch of ground. And it just covers everything very quickly.
Yeah, and the straws from the soy milk, there's like straw wrappers everywhere. It's like she's a junkie. It's like finding needles everywhere.
The food, like, I don't know, like,
like the food is rough because it starts to feel like a science project and you find it in weird places. And
the food on the hands, like even if you say, oh, only eating in the kitchen, like they get food on their hands and you tell them to wash their hands, but they don't. And you can't chase them around and make them wash it. Or they go in and run water on their hands for 2 seconds, just sort of adding to the sticky concoction. And then they touch the remotes. And the next time you grab the remote, it's covered with sticky stuff or crusted on yogurt or some other terrible thing. Like you can tell as soon as you wrap your hand around it, like the dried peanut butter is coating the outside of the remote.
I like to I periodically surprise her by telling her to let me smell her hands. Now, give me your hands. Let me smell them. That doesn't smell like soap. That doesn't smell like soap. Get back there.
Yeah, if only smell. Well, you can just look at them.
I know. I know. Well, so I'll get back on the homework. I'm going to try and be a better person.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I was doing tonight before we hopped on to record was you remember Trading Places?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So the parking garage, the crop report.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All about that. Well, the Destiny crop report came out today, so I was reading it intently.
The real crop report, the one they're waiting for.
Well, the Destiny equivalent of that crop report, like
the Destiny crop report.
Yes. Which is the yet another weapon rebalancing announcement. Anyway, it's very complicated when we'll get to Destiny eventually. I'll explain it to you, but it was just very exciting today that came out. And I have to reading it intently because you want to know, like, how did the oranges fare? You know,
you're reading a crop report about a first-person shooter game. It's
not actually a crop report. I'm trying to give you an analogy. I'm trying to give you something to hold on to.
Okay. Well, I like to think that we're becoming something like long-distance friends. I don't try to provoke you on the internet. I try to stay out of your video games because I know you're having fun with those. But I have to say that I have never felt more completely adrift on a topic since maybe German philosophy in college, since maybe 19th century German philosophy. I've never felt more completely adrift than when I see you on the Slack or on the Twitter talking about what I think is probably Destiny, and you want people to help you fight somebody, and then you're up all night, and it sounds really absorbing.
Yeah, we talked about that on the latest ATP, and my point then was that, like, a lot of Destiny is the creation of new proper nouns. Like, they create this game world and they give names to everything, and so it's just wall to wall proper nouns for everything, for every aspect of the game. And a lot
George Lucas would love that.
And a lot of the proper nouns can be shortened, so you can exchange sentences with someone else who is into the game that consists almost entirely of shortened proper nouns with a few linking words and like maybe a verb in there somewhere. And it looks like gibberish because you have nothing to hang your hat on.
Because it's like you've got like jargon, and then you've got like insider abbreviated jargon.
Right. And then just tons of proper nouns. And so it's like you find I recognize and, the, run, and today, and every other word in the sentence means nothing to me. So how can you make sense of what we're even talking about? Especially if the proper nouns, like, you can't, is that a place? Is that a person? Is that a thing? Because they're all just made up words. But
it's fun. It's fun to watch, though. I mean, it's kind of joyful because, I mean, that must be exciting. It must be very immersive.
Yeah. And speaking of beating PoE 35.
Is this where you fight Emil Zola? Is that what you were doing? Didn't you have to fight Zola?
Yeah.
Skolas,
I'll tell you about that. That was one of the more exciting gaming experiences of my life. That 5 hours I spent between like 9:30 and 2:30 at night with.
You said it was one of the most challenging things you've done, right? Or like the sense of victory was great.
It was pretty challenging. It was up there, definitely. Although, I mean, it wasn't really that hard because basically that was my first try. I had never attempted it before. I attempted it, several times during that 5 hour span, obviously, and accomplished it. So in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that hard, but it was very exciting. I will try to take you through. Once you understand a little bit more about Destiny, I'll try to take you through that experience.
Okay, I would enjoy that.
It's on the list.